You have no choice but to suffer the way the collective suffers unless you're remarkably different. Unless you're like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing what everybody's doing, and then you take your beatings, which they will give you because people tend to hate what they don't understand violently. They can't handle somebody going off and finding a way for themselves. You'd have to decide you're not going to be a part of it and have parents that are like, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to be part of it. Go meditate in the forest, go play with the trees and listen to the birds. Yes, I get the sense that a healthy, well-rounded adolescent would be able to spend hours in nature, in nature's beauty, and have a full heart without being bored. Is that the case for any kid you see? All right, folks, we're back with another Sadhguru reaction video. It has been a while since we've reacted to Sadhguru. Love the Sadhguru. This was a request, man, from a while back that I just came across as I was going through the request bin. I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about this video. This is called The 4 Parts of the Mind with Vinita Bali and Sadhguru. So, all right, we'll get into this. Chew right into it.
So Sadhguru, what is a creative mind?
Oh. How big an answer do you want?
As big as you want it.
See, the English word mind doesn't say anything, because it's just one generic word which does not describe different dimensions of what the mind is. Mind is not just one something sitting here and doing something, okay? There is really no such thing as mind. In the yogic culture, there is no mind. There is a physical body, there is a mental body. Because what you're calling as mind right now is a certain combination of memory and intelligence. There is memory in your body, more memory in your body than you can imagine. If I have to get at you again, it's okay, I'm picking on you, okay? You definitely…
That one there, I'm finding, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, something resonates about that there's more memory in your body almost than there is in your mind, if that's what he said.
Yeah.
Like older you get, you become more physically aware. I think just as people get older, they become aware in a lot of different ways. And it's like, I can just sit and be like, okay, what's going on? Oh, weird. Some little shot of anxiety there. And then think about that. And then become conscious of it. And what's going on there? And is it attached to a memory? And is there anything specifically? And then it'll lead you down a rabbit hole. But that can happen all over your body, all through your torso, in your head sometimes even.
Yeah. Well, you get that. If you go some place that activates that memory in the body, you will get that feeling. You won't even know it. You just walk in someplace and you'll be like, oh, and then instantly you get a flashback or a memory to oh, that reminds me of this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And I was even listening to the DTFH, the Duncan Trussell podcast the other day, and he was talking about that you can. He felt anxious or sad or something on some particular date, and then he only realized after thinking about it for a while, why do I feel so down or whatever? It was the anniversary of his mother's passing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, and then some professional was telling him, yeah, that can happen. It can be but then you start thinking about it and you're like, the older you get, the more days you have some anniversary of a thing that bad happened,
Yeah.
And the body can't just store traumatic things. It's got to store, happy things too.
Yes,
right?
of course, yeah.
So maybe there's some kind of a balance going on.
really don't remember how your great-great-great-great-grandmother looked like, but her nose is sitting on your face right now. Yes? You don't remember a thing consciously, but your body remembers 100%. How 10 generations ago your grandmother was, your body still remembers. 1,000,000 years ago how your forefathers were, your body remembers, isn't it? It's not forgotten and it's not going to forget. Your mind is not capable of this kind of memory. Your body has 1,000,000,000,000 times more memory than your so-called brain. This whole shift towards the brain and intellectual process is a European malice. They gave too much significance to thought. This has happened because they lived under a subjugated society, religiously subjugated society, where you're not supposed to think anything except what's written in some book, otherwise you're dead. They lived like this for a long time. Because of this, when they got little freedom to think and manage to live, they started celebrating their thought too much. Let's understand the context of thought.
That's interesting. Think of how different thinking is from doing. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like I get this weird image, and I don't know how valid this is, but I'm just going to kind of portray it a little bit. It's almost like if you get really stuck in some egoic thinking place where you're all rationality and you're all thoughts, it's almost like you get to a point where the only thing you can communicate is like selfish today. I'm selfish I feel selfishly. Oh, that's interesting, that reminds me of selfish. Like there's a big difference between all this thought lock and then going and doing, you know. And you could be like, well, thinking has to do with doing.
Well, is all thought, I'm sorry, I'm probably misunderstanding what you're saying, but are you saying that like thoughts are selfish? Like,
well,
in their nature?
The ego, I've been thinking about a lot of this lately, and I get the sense that the ego is like, you know, has no choice but to be self-centered and selfish, you know. And all selfishness is kind of painful to some degree. It's like a separation and a resistance to what is. But that's like what the ego is. It's this, you know, you can use the mind and you can use thoughts, but we misuse that as a tool. It seems like crazy. You know, it's like only meant for limited things, and we try to use it to like ruminate on the past like crazy and project into the future what we want to have happen. And I've been thinking like that seems like an overuse of it as a tool. You feel better when you're more in the world and more active and actually less thought oriented.
Yeah. I think he's making a lot of sense here. The stuff he was talking about with, and maybe this relates to it a bit, was that like passing from generation down to generation, like through, like if you believe in evolution and stuff like that, your DNA, your actual physical body structure, the trauma of all your ancestors, all that stuff, even the good stuff that happened to them, the positive, that all getting passed through creating your being. Mm-hmm. So maybe when it comes to thought and ego and action, maybe there's some type of a communication thing that needs to be built there so that the actions aren't, you know, in response to negative things that were passed down.
But when we're in flow, even something like speaking that you would imagine there's a whole bunch of thought attached to, when you're really like in flow, it seems like you can even speak without thinking very much. And when you're driving, you're not like push the pedal down now, you know, change gears now. Like when you're driving, it's you very little awareness as to what you're doing, you know. It's almost like too much thought connected to an activity will make you like screw up or do it wrong.
Yes.
Some of the best things we do have like thought is like outside of it. It's all action. It's all complete immersion in what's going on. Yeah. There's like a disease and a sickness of trying to rationalize. And what if that's because reality is not rationalizable? Whatever the word is. You know what I mean? Like you can't rationalize it. And so but then again, you know, this whole argument I'm making could be defeated with like, well, then say goodbye to like polio vaccines and everything like that, because people had to like think about what they were going to do, sit down and think into the future and put their thoughts on paper and all this stuff. I'm not really even sure what I'm trying to communicate. I'll let the man say what he's saying.
You can only think from the data that you already have gathered. That means you can never think anything new. You can recycle it, you can rehash it, you can produce permutations and combinations of it, but you cannot think something absolutely new. It is not in the nature of the thought to come up with something new. It can only recycle the past. That means if you dedicate yourself to your thought process, if you enshrine your thought process, you're ensuring nothing new ever happens in your life. So thought need not be celebrated like this. That's why in this culture, thought has never been given so much significance. What you think is your psychological drama. We don't think much about that. Because it's your drama. Your drama is important for you, somebody else's drama is important for them. Everybody thinks their drama is the most important drama in the universe. This is everybody's experience, because they're so identified with their own psychological drama. This psychological drama should not determine the nature of your life, because this is just a small happening compared to the life process. Life is a much deeper intelligence than intellect. We can look at… the yogic system looks at the mind as 16 parts. Those 16 parts are further broken and they're taken up to 84,000 parts.
It's a lot of parts.
But now if I talk about 84,000, already there's a segment which says no, so I will make it 4. I'm taking away 80, okay? I'm being fair to you. Only 4. 4 fundamental parts. One is the intellect, which we have in modern world, in today's world, we are unnecessarily giving too much significance to intellect, and we will pay an enormous price for this. You will come to a place where you'll know everything, but you'll know nothing of life significance, really. Today you will see this happening to children. For the first time, this generation you see, 10, 11-year-old or 12-year-old children, they look bored. When you were 10, 11, you did not know what is boredom, it was not possible. It was too exciting to be alive and looking around. You will see 10, 12-year-old children all looking bored because they've seen the cosmos through their phone screen. They know it all. And especially in the Western countries, you will see this happening at 8, 10. They're really bored. You will see in the school buses, they're all sitting bored. Because by the time you're 12, you already had one love affair, you know what is a break, you know how to all this recover from that, you tasted alcohol, you've seen this, probably you've gone into all kinds of physical things, and you know the cosmos. What more? By the time you're 15, there's really no purpose for you to exist for many of them. You should not be surprised if this culture continues. I'm not saying this is a prediction, it is something that I see beginning to happen.
Is he talking about being exposed to too much all at once?
Man.
Is that what he's getting at? And the damage that might cause…
But he's relating it to thinking, you know?
Yeah.
There's an aspect of like thinking here, like, it's true. The kids get exposed to a lot, but it's not just that they get exposed to a lot, everything through their phone, and you know, they have so much more life experience at a younger age. It's not just that happens, it's that we are involuntarily pushed through life by culture. You don't have a choice, because if you don't act like the other kids act, you will be a loser, and being a loser hurts. You'd have to be Jesus not to be affected by being a fucking outcast.
Yeah.
You know? So you have no choice but to suffer the way the collective suffers, unless you're remarkably different. Unless you're like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing what everybody's doing. And then you take your beatings, which they will give you because people tend to hate what they don't understand violently. They can't handle somebody going off and finding a way for themselves. You'd have to decide you're not going to be a part of it and have parents that are like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. You don't have to be part of it. Go meditate in the forest, go play with the trees and listen to the birds. Yes, I get the sense that a healthy, well-rounded adolescent would be able to spend hours in nature, you know, in nature's beauty, and have a full heart without being bored. Is that the case for any kid you see? You know, other than like some liar that's like, my kid is fine, quite, thank you. Thanks for, but no thanks. You know, other than some fucking liar that would say that. What he's saying is true. Look at the kids. They're bored like adults get bored.
Yeah. I suspect maybe too that by being hit by a tsunami of information like that at the ages that these kids are getting this stuff, they might not be able to come to any conclusions. They might feel so overwhelmed. Well, like, what's the point?
I have the answer.
What's the point?
I have the answer, and I'll just insert the point here in a sec in conjunction with whatever Sadhguru says. This is my sagely wisdom that I'm going to put out here. This week on our videos, I'm full ego. I'm wearing bedazzled things and I've gone full neurotic ranting. I've just chosen to sit in that for this week. But the answer really is radical acceptance, is letting go, because your thoughts are going to reel. They're going to want answers for everything. They're going to be conceptualizing everything and categorizing everything and wanting answers and a game plan. That's what your mind wants to do. And it wants to be satiated, and it wants candy, and it wants entertainment, and all these different things. The answer is radical, ridiculous acceptance, to the point where you're not resisting anymore. You give up attachment and resistance. So you're not resisting anything that is, fuck you! I accept it. I'm not even going to fight against it. You don't fight against anything, and you will lapse into peace. And it's not really peace. All it is an absence of suffering. That's what I'm pretty damn convinced. You know, there's probably deeper levels to go into some kind of peace that transcends understanding. But once you get a taste of not suffering, you won't forget it. And that's already a pretty sweet gift. People don't realize how much they're suffering. They're like downing the depression pills and downing every kind of pill to get, it's not good enough. It's never going to be good enough. You're never going to get it. And, and your kids are going to be bored just like you, just like their fathers before them. The answer is non-attachment and existing in a world with complete acceptance, because your mind is going to present to you, well, then you're fucked, man. You've been fucked since the cradle, and you're going to be screwed all the way to your death. And you even accept that. You go, yep, I know I'm doomed. I know this ends with me in doom. You accept all of it, and behold, peace falls upon you. So let's hear what he says. That's my take on it.
In another 50 or 100 years' time, if 25 to 50% of the people commit suicide, you should not be surprised, because life needs some exuberance. If too much information happens to you without experience, that exuberance will be gone, and a false sense of knowing becomes so strong in you. This is the danger of intellect, because intellect wants to dissect everything. Intellect is like a scalpel. The sharper it is, the better it is. It wants to dissect and know. Dissection works with some things, not with all aspects of life. If you want to know the poor frog, you remember? The poor frog that you crucified and cut, and great knowledge you acquired from all that torture is unbelievable. How much knowledge you know. For the torture that frog went through, how much knowledge you have acquired is quite unbelievable. All that you got to know. Now you got interest, suddenly you got interested, the mother that you had ignored, you want to know your mother today. Please get yourself a sharp knife, start the dissection. You may know everything about her liver, kidney, heart, but you won't have a mother left, that's all. So life cannot be known by breaking it up. You can know physical things by breaking it up. You cannot know life by breaking it into pieces. But this is the nature of the intellect. The whole modern science has evolved from human intellect. Because it's produced technological benefits, you can't argue against it, because people,
Yeah.
they think they're scientists, they know nothing about science. They're just enjoying their iPhone. They think they're scientists because they can do this. No, technology is fine, it's brought much comfort and convenience, but it will not bring life to us. So intellect is like this. Intellect will be useful only depending upon what it is identified with and what is held, what holds this, how steadily. So the next dimension of the mind, the first one is called as buddhi, which is the intellect. The second one is called as ahankara. Ahankara does not mean ego, this, that, it means the identity. Whatever you identified with, your intellect functions only around that. Simple, if you just identify with a nation, if you say, I'm an Indian, everything Indian looks beautiful. If you cross the border and you say you're something else, all that looks beautiful. So whatever you identified with, it's only with that the intellect functions. So ahankara is the identity. How consciously and how steadily your ahankara has been created will determine the effectiveness of your intellect. Just because it's sharp, it does not mean it'll be effective, because sharp intellect or a sharp knife can cause any amount of damage to you. If you have a sharp knife and you don't have a steady hand, you will cut yourself all over the place. That's all that's happening. Human suffering is just this. You don't know how to hold this intellect in your hand properly. Every day you're cutting yourself. So all suffering is on self-help because your own mind causing this to you all the time. No matter what happens, people suffer, whichever way they suffer, because they don't know how to hold this intellect. If you had the mind of an earthworm, you would be quite peaceful.
I think he's making some really good points here. The idea that you can be holding too much intellect without enough consciousness. When you have a lack of balance there, the damage that he gave the example of cutting yourself like with a knife.
It's painful.
When you are absent of consciousness, giving yourself a false idea that you know too much, because I think the idea behind consciousness is that like once you become like a certain amount of aware, you realize it's infinite, and it doesn't, there's no amount of obtaining information that is ever going to give me some sense of like, now I have enough, I'm sound, and I have a firm foundation that I can sleep on. No, because it's infinite.
And no, you're right. That is correct. Because it is infinite, right? You'll just the more you zoom in, it'll just zoom in forever, and the more you zoom out, it'll zoom out forever, right?
Yeah.
Ever expanding. And then the thing that he said about if you were an earthworm, you would be content. I didn't cut up frogs when I was a kid. I used to cut up earthworms, right?
Yeah.
But I heard Teal Swan talking about that. She said they came across a deer with a broken leg, and she put her consciousness into the deer to see what that was like, and she was like, it was in an enormous amount of pain, but it wasn't suffering because it didn't attach a story to it. The stories, that's another thing you got to drop if you just if you want peace. You know, only if you're interested in, actually authentically enjoying your life instead of lying like most people do. If you really do, you drop the stories. No more stories. No more stories about why he's dressed like that. No more stories about anything. No more stories about, yourself, or what you think I'm up to, or what you go blank.
But also, I think it's also good to keep in mind, though, that there are lots of people come from different places in their life. They don't even understand the idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah, well,
when it comes
too bad.
To stories.
This is where I am. So who else am I supposed to communicate with? I find it painful talking to people most times. I'm like, what are we doing? We're essentially, just, it's like I said before, so much of conversation is just selfish. Oh yeah, selfish, it's selfish. Why can't we just live? Why can't we? I think that there's actually a way to be in such a good place that you start to communicate without words. Problem is we're limited to words and symbols here. For now. Yeah, for now. I think that we're just going to get a point where the people you want to be around most, you probably say very little to. It's like, oh my God, that guy's energy is beauty. Or that girl's energy is beautiful,
Yeah.
And then you can be around those people, and it's a beautiful experience without all this. We're using a tool, man. The mind, the intellect is a tool, like he says. It's just a tool.
Yes? You're trying to do it in so many ways to reduce the sharpness of the intellect by drink, by drug, by overeating, by doing all kinds of things somehow to take away the sharpness because the damn thing hurts. It hurts not because that's its nature, it hurts because you do not know how to hold it. The next dimension of the mind is called as manas, which is a huge volume of memory. It is not here or there, entire body carries memory. So, manomaya kosha, this is called, a huge sack of memory. This memory is in various stacks, we'll not go into all these details considering some people have said a clear no. They don't want to have a mind, I'm sorry, they don't want to know anything about the mind. So the fourth dimension of the mind is called as chitta. Chitta means it's pure intelligence. It is unsullied by memory. It has no trace of any kind of memory, it's just pure intelligence. If you touch this, then you have excess to what you're referring to as the source of creation, because all kinds of things might have been fed to you. God is this, God is love, God is compassion, God is kind, whatever. Somebody come, stand on the edge of this stage, say all the prayer you want to say and fall. Let me see whether compassion happens to you or a cracked bone happens to you. I would like to check, all right? All these things have been made up because whatever somebody is deprived of, they will attribute that quality to their idea of God. Your ideas of God have come only because you do not know how this whole creation happened. Because you don't have an answer, you made it up. Because you're a human being, you said a big human being is sitting up there. Oh, how can you do all this? If somebody asks, he has 10 hands, so he does lot of things, not like you. Whatever, it's all right for children. But essentially, because you do not know how creation happened, you are coming up with explanations. So that which is the source of creation, don't believe what I say, what anybody says. Pay attention to one piece of creation. Just take a flower, pay attention to this, pay an attention to a leaf or an atom or an ant. All you will see is phenomenal intelligence beyond anything you can imagine, yes? But nobody told you God is intelligence. But this culture has said this to you in many ways. They told you Chidakasha, Chidambara and so many things to tell you if you touch your chit, the whole existence becomes yours. Everything that's worth knowing is right here because you have access to the source of creation. So these are the four dimensions of your mind. Unfortunately, the modern education thinks by just feeding information and keeping the intellect reasonably sharp, everything is going to happen. No. You will rip this planet apart looking for well-being. You may lose the planet, or you may manage to go to another planet and start your work again there. But well-being will not happen. If well-being has to happen, you have to dig a little deeper into this one, otherwise, no.
I found it fascinating that, what was it, the chitra or the cheat, whatever he was saying there, kind of like that.
Chitta.
Yeah, that like universal intelligence, like tapping into it, and he was like by like just sheer observation, taking simple things in creation and seeing the miraculous nature of things. And I find that does work. That does work.
What do you mean?
By just observing, like going outside and staring at flowers or the sky or the trees.
What does it do?
I think there's some peace, because if you can block out the nonsense going in your mind while just paying attention to the experiencing the creation or the reality as raw as you can possibly get it.
Yeah.
There's a benefit, I think, to being able to do that. It's helpful. Besides, instead of like always running around and doing what he was saying by like just feeding yourself constantly, like gorging. It's almost like a gluttony on information that we do all the time when we're scrolling through our phones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is a different type of knowledge or intellect you're getting by sheer observation, I think.
Oh, well, yeah, like especially if you keep in mind the goal, right? Like for many people, the goal is like, it would be peace and contentment, right?
Yeah.
And then they would judge somebody who's got peace and contentment because maybe they're simple. Say you see a real simple person. They're simple. They can go out and look at butterflies and enjoy them. And they would be, they would not only judge that, but be afraid of it. I better get to work and bust my ass to make millions so then I'll really be happy. You will not. You will not be happy because you fail to understand what you're talking about. Yeah. The intelligence that's actually, my yoke is light, my burden, my burden is light, my yoke is easy, like Jesus said, right? Yeah. It's accessible to you, but, you got to imagine.
Maybe like grounded in something simpler, like a simpler consciousness, right? Maybe we elevate ourselves too much sometimes, thinking that we're so conscious, but really we're not as conscious as we think we are. And maybe,
what do you mean?
I'm talking about like doing something simple, like a simple observation, like staring at a butterfly or a bird. That's like a task, like should be a simple task, which maybe lines up with, because we were talking about the idea of like intellect and consciousness raising together.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we're not as conscious as humans collectively. We're not as conscious as we think we are.
And so yeah, without
by
a doubt.
keeping it at a simple level, you're growing in a healthier. It's more manageable. It's not as stressful, like what you're saying.
But here's the thing: everything is a part of this thing, right? I think that peace is available for you like that if you follow this way of thinking of it. Pick up a coffee cup, thumb the edge of it with your finger. Take it in, be immersed in something that is happening right now. You can do it with your own hand. You could be immersed in that and be fully present, and you're in a higher consciousness than you were a moment ago. But the problem is complexity exists too. And we do like cutting things up into pieces and investigating them and everything like that. It's actually somehow both. It's both the access to peace and groundedness and the truth of this thing, while engaging, almost like the Bhagavad Gita would suggest you ought to do, rise to the fight and being fully involved and taking part in the drama of life, of your mind and of everything else. You're either doing it or you ain't doing it. The proof is in the pudding. You are what you are, which is, and everybody brings something different. That's the cool thing, like Teal Swan's way different than him. And I'm way different than both of them. And then Leo Guru's different yet further. Yeah. And all of them come and think that their way's the best and the most authentic and real.
What? Do they? I don't know if they think that.
Many people do. Many people. I think many gurus are notorious for thinking that they've got it, and that oftentimes other people are full of shit or whatever. But that's all part of it. Are you really doing that process of accepting everything if you're not accepting even the things that you don't want to be so? But if you're looking for a little mental vacation, definitely let go of all those thought forms and patterns.
Go stare at the flowers
and try to see if you can do it. Try to see if you can be enthralled in something very simple, like color and smell and the way your body feels and your breath.
Well, there you have it, the 4 parts of the mind. If you like this video, don't be afraid to leave a comment. Maybe you got some information on there that we didn't, pick up on, and you can help enlighten us. And if you did like the video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and everybody, until next time, stay spiritual.